what's said in the halls is more important than what we put on the walls. You can have great things written on the hallways of your organization, your business. So ultimately what people say as a leader, what people say as an organization will be what you see. So I can define it, great. Now I have to say it.
A leader expects others to just take ownership rather than inviting people to take ownership. Are we giving space for people to interpret it in their words, to speak it back?
Well, if you're a leader, then lead. If you're a leader, then help develop people, put that in them, because you and I both know that most people are just going through life and just waiting to see what happens to them instead of making things happen.
Welcome to the Tyler Dickerhoof Show with me, your host, Tyler Dickerhoof. On today's episode, I have one of the speakers for the Impact Driven Leader Summit 2025, my friend, Robby Emery, joining me today. Robby, I'm not going to introduce you. If you're watching the video, you painfully, as a Buckeye, I see the background. I have to close my eyes for it. You're sitting in one of the rooms at that place up north. Robby, thanks for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. A lot of power behind me here, as you can see. So, but hey, to your Buckeyes, great season. Wow, just impressive.
Let's talk about this for a moment.
Definitely the best team in the country.
Yeah, they earned it. They earned it. And back-to-back Big Ten champions. I mean, look at that. I mean, Big Ten national champions back-to-back. I mean, it's that good. I can give credit to that. Yeah, with that vaunted SEC, like, what is that even?
They have nothing to say. They used to have all of it. They used to, for years, even maybe even decades, it was owned it. Yeah, 1%. So it's great to have, a strong Big Ten conference. It's great to have so many teams who are good in our conference, not just the Ohio States or the Michigan, but Oregon. And even like Washington, I feel like they're going to come around someday, and then Michigan State will be back eventually. But
Indiana, don't forget about Indiana, Penn State.
Yeah.
We can talk about that.
I get Indiana. Don't get me started on there.
All right. I know that was a little bit of a
Cincinnati fan. I'm not a Cincinnati fan.
All right. But here's what I am excited. I shared it in the open, sharing it now. You are going to be one of the speakers at the Impact Driven Leader Summit 2025. On May 7th and 8th in Spokane, Washington. I'm excited for you to be there. One, as we've talked about, the ability for us to hang out, for you to be here in Spokane, but also pour in the community. And one of the things is we talked about, and we've talked about this before, the official, unofficial theme of the IDL Summit this year is culture. That's partly because of yourself and being part of cultures, but through all of your experiences, the culture that has happened the last 8-10 years now that you've been in Ann Arbor. Also, one of the other speakers, Jenny Control, in her book Culture Matters. We have Katie Harnato, who is the USL president of the soccer teams here in Spokane, whose men's team made it to the finals last year in year one. So it's this idea of culture and kind of what you shared with me as we're talking about this championship culture. And I have this in parenthetically in quotes. And I'd love for you to just share with this, because I know you're pretty good on your feet. A long climb and a short peak, a championship culture.
I would say championship culture, one is you have to define it, right? Then you have to declare it. Then you have to defend it. That's a championship culture.
So if you think about that, and it's kind of as I described it, this long climb, you think about those first two words, right? You have to define it. You have to, declare it. That's a climb. Defend it is, well, if you're a champion, you get to defend it when you're a champion, not until.
Right. Or like the process of it, right? So if you care enough about your culture, whether you have a winning culture or you're trying to get there, you still have to defend it. Most people don't defend it. Most people are like, hey, I define it, I declare it. And then we have opposing cultures or opposing voices come into the organization. It would definitely, railroad your culture, derail your culture.
What have you seen, it kind of, and again, I want to go back to, your experiences and what you're excited to share with people in the audience that are going to be live at the event in Spokane, kind of this, journey, this perspective of what the bringing what you just said, this definition of culture. How do you define that? How are you going to share with people that are there for themselves or the communities they're a part of to really start to define their culture, whether what they see or what they want to build?
Yeah. So culture ultimately, what's said in the halls is more important than what we put on the walls.
Oh.
So in regards to all the things that you can have great things written on the hallways of your organization, your business, but if you have people within your organization who have a toxic conversation or they are speaking negatively across the board, then it doesn't matter what you put on the walls. So ultimately, what people say as a leader, what people say as an organization will be what you see. So I can define it, great. Now I have to say it. I have a friend of mine, his entire family came over to Michigan from Mexico. And he's my age. He's 46 years old. Been friends for a long time. He grew up in a home where his grandmother spoke Spanish. His mother and father spoke Spanish. Even his older sisters spoke Spanish. And I asked him, his name's Sam Gonzalez. Sam Gonzalez. Sam, why can't you speak Spanish? I can't speak Spanish. Everyone else around him can. And he said this, Tyler, he said, the only way I can say this is that because they never made me speak it back to them. So he doesn't speak a language within his own home that it's being said all around him, but he never speaks it back. And so therefore he never learns the language of the culture in the home that he's grown up in. So it can't just be, I get it. We can catch a lot of things and we're supposed to, but we also have to encourage people to speak this back. What are they saying and how are they saying it to see the things that they want to see ultimately at the end of the day?
You know what that really resonates with me, this central idea, and you kind of have shared it a little bit, is if our actions don't match our words, what I take from that is if our actions don't match our words, right? What you just said about him, if his actions of speaking it back don't match then it's going to get lost. And all of a sudden it just kind of dissipates. And what I just picked up there is that's something that's pretty powerful to, think about in a culture that are we giving space for people to interpret it in their words, to speak it back?
Yeah. Well, and we have to give them space. And they don't necessarily have to be an echo, right?
Yeah, I think an echo is a problem.
Mm-hmm, yeah, I do too. I think they need to learn, right? If an echo is not something, it's not knowledge. An echo is not knowledge. An echo is just repeating what someone else has said or doing what someone else has done. Don't be an echo. You have to learn the language. You have to learn the basic knowledge of what the cultural language is. And so you can say it properly. And so if you don't say things properly, ultimately you're going to see the wrong thing. And we saw that play out in the big game.
So tell us about that.
2 years ago, 2022, we played Ohio State. Michigan at the time was
you just had to, didn't you? Okay. All right.
We were the favorite in 2022. We were the favorite to win that game in Ohio State. And we did. We went in there and we won the game as we went in and won it definitively. At the end of the game, we planted the flag in the middle of the field. There was no incident. There was no brawl. There was no fight. There was nothing that happened. We celebrated the fact that we did that there. Now, fast forward a couple years later, and Michigan is not the outright, going into, Ohio State to win the game. We're not the favorite. In fact, even this year is like we were one of the worst teams in the Big Ten, and we had flags planted in our stadium because we lost to Texas, and so they planted a flag. Then we go to Ohio State. And you know what the game plays out. We end up winning in a very unprecedented way, in the way that we could only win that game. We did. And at the end of the game, we planted the flag. And at the end of the game, after planting the flag, there was a melee, if you will. There was a brawl. There was a major incident that was captured across college football, sports radio, everywhere. And only thing I can think of is this had to happen because you could see clips of guys from Ohio State, our players, coaches. They were saying we weren't going to let them do this. We weren't going to let them plant the flag. We weren't going to let them make this happen. And it doesn't take a lot of knowledge about football or culture to understand that 2 years ago, when we planted the flag, no incident, that leadership had to speak to those players who were the same players that played us 2 years ago, saying, hey, we're not going to let them plant that flag again. We're not going to let this happen again. Now, what they're saying is we're going to win the next time we play them at Ohio State. But because they didn't win, that mindset was still there that we're not going to let them do this. And so as leaders, we have to be careful that what we say will be ultimately what we see. We want to win the game, not that we don't want to let them plant the flag. And that is culture 101. So I have to define it. I have to declare it properly. And then I have to protect the culture in which it's being around.
It's been a few months since that incident, the end of November. Here we are recording the first part of March. And as you've internalized that, as you maybe as an organization, we've stopped and thought about that. And as you just shared with us, the power of proper declaration. Words are meaningful. Words are powerful. Where do you see in your experience or as you look forward to this next generation, because college football always changes who is that enigmatic leader, right? Because it's a revolving door of personnel, right? How do you go forward and say, ooh, we need to be very careful in everything we do, because by example of that, we recognized what may have been trivial is probably more powerful than what we realize.
The great thing is, if you look at it, if what we say, brought about that result, like a negative result, not a good result, then the same power is in the positive side, that our words do create our world. Like I have a 14-year-old son, and his whole, most of his life, I called him Champ. Hey, Champ. Hey, good morning, Champ. Hey, have a great day at school, Champ. My son's never won anything. Right? But I'm speaking something over him that, hey, that you're a winner, that you're a champion, that in one day I want to see that. We don't speak that way to our children. We don't say negative things because we don't want to see negative things. And I think more and more now, and as the NIL develops, as profit sharing and revenue sharing comes into play in the next season that we're entering in, that more and more people like a Nick Saban or people of influence like a Jim Harbaugh or anyone else who, man, really try to craft their words.
You didn't want to say a Ryan Day.
Whoa. I saw Ryan Day.
Uh-huh. You saw what he did.
Yeah.
But here's the thing that I want to give credit there. And, as I know, we've talked about this, and as you squirm for those people aren't watching on video, which as a friend I love, is there was a moment there where if we want to sit here and break this down, we want to be the Monday morning quarterbacks, there might have been an element of, oh, my words didn't accomplish the goal. Because right after that, they had a real, quote unquote, come to Jesus moment that probably propelled them to winning the national championship. Now, I don't want to overwhelm our entire conversation in talking about college football, but I love using these elements to then go on and say, hey, as a leader, sometimes we have to stop and assess that my words didn't get the result. Do I put my head in the sand and just say, well, that's what it is? Or are you vulnerable enough to say, I got to own this? Because according to parents, according to a lot of players, not so much other coaches, there was a tremendous amount of that next week, players, leaders, and the coach himself that owned, we did not get the result that our words tried to lead us to.
Right. And again, you own it, right? You say, hey, this is not what we wanted. This is not the result we wanted to happen. okay, what can we take away from this and build off of? We still got an opportunity. We don't get to play in the Big Ten Championship, but we have an opportunity in the college football playoff to do something no one's ever done, to play and go the distance, that play more games than anyone's ever played in college football, and to be the first team to do it. So you lean into, okay, what are some positives? What can we take away? And I think, if you watch the end of that game, you can find some positives. You can find, not everybody was fighting. Not everybody was leaning into, on both sides, were leaning into what was happening in that, mass movement of people. Some guys were even off in the corner praying and hugging and celebrating each other and talking to one another. Because I know this, once the emotion dies down, those players across the field really appreciate each other. In fact, they probably celebrate each other more than the fans celebrate these players, because they understand these guys have put in a ton of work. They know the work they've put in. They know the effort they've done. They know all the things that have gone into it. And so, man, let's look into, the revival that's happened freaking on the, campus of Ohio State and Columbus in general, the, people being baptized in, below zero temperatures, if you will, outside. It's been amazing to see all that's happened. So as a coach, as leaders, find that good in your organization, find that good in your company, lean into that, apologize for what you've done wrong, and move on.
There's a transition and element there as we're talking about, cultures, but environments of meaning something bigger. And for yourself, coming from the faith space, being a pastor, bringing a portion of that to the team there at Michigan, and seeing it in our world. We've gone through almost decades of there's no place for your beliefs. And now we're having this great gravitation back to, there absolutely is a place, because if we don't have those beliefs, whether it is a Christian belief, a Muslim belief, a Buddhist belief, whatever that is for, people, if you don't have any of that, I would say culture suffers rather than a culture embracing that someone believes something. Would you resonate with that?
Absolutely. You have to have something to stand on, right? Like I a lot of things I do, I equate to, the value of a diamond and how it's determined. One of the things that are really, and even to college athletes, but let's just go to this, like any individual. If every individual in this has intrinsic value, like you have value, everyone has value, your organization has value, you're leading people of value, and you look at it, okay, what we all have to do is we have to have some kind of setting or foundation. Because if you don't have that, right, you'll never go in a jewelry store and see a loose diamond. They're always locked up. They're always stored away in a safe. They're always put away. You never see a loose diamond, because a loose diamond ultimately becomes a lost diamond and becomes incredibly detrimental to that organization. And so as people, we all have to have a setting. If you want other people to see you, you want to be able to be seen and do great things, then you got to put yourself in the setting. If that's faith, that's your family, whatever that is. And for these young men here, it's football. But I get them to find something even of longer lasting, whether for some football is 3 years, for some football maybe 15 years. I don't know. But let's find faith, and that faith becomes something that will be forever. Because like my friend Sam Gonzalez, who doesn't speak Spanish, well, his wife doesn't speak Spanish. His children don't speak Spanish. Why? Because he doesn't, so they don't.
Talking a little bit about character, because that's one of your focuses there with the program, and where that aligns. We talked earlier a bit about if our words are one thing and our actions are another, what's the intersect of character development, a character process to really bring those two things in line for a culture, for an organization?
I think what we don't realize is that we have a perceived character. So you know who you are. You know who you are as a person. You have this character, but you also have a perceived character. And what people don't do is they don't protect that as well. For example, like years ago, here at Michigan, we have parking spaces. This is the most organization you have. This is employee of the month. This is the boss's parking spot. This has your name on it and everything. And here we do the same. And for years, I never had one because, one, I was a volunteer, two, I was part-time. And so I did make some friends on our staff with our coaches. And one of the coaches told me, he says, "Hey, Robby, I usually get dropped off by my wife here at work. Feel free to park at my spot anytime. And here at Schembecker Hall, man, the parking lot is packed all the time. It is a commodity. If you can find a space, it's really hard to get one. And so I was like, yes, I want that spot. And I'm telling you what, Tyler, I went there. I pulled in that spot one day. I sat there, and before I got in my car, I realized something, that only me and him know that I can park there and that he's okay with me parking there. But everyone else in this whole building, in this lot, knows that it's his parking spot, know that that's my car. And they're just thinking I'm parking there. And that goes against my perceived character. I don't want people thinking I'm overstepping. I don't want people thinking I'm doing something, or I got there and I'm taking his spot, that coach's spot. No. And so we need to protect the perceived character as well and think about that more often.
You share that story, and I appreciate that. You had a moment of, revelation, right? A lot of times people don't. And, you talk about that and appreciate what you're saying. It's like, whether it becomes nepotism, whether it becomes, what's important to one isn't important to him because of a status, a hierarchy. How do we bring that element of character, that ability to personally have that reveal, or through a mentorship reveal, so people understand that dynamic and how toxic it could be within a culture?
Yeah. One is you have to, talk about it more, bring those things up, bring them to light, right? We kind of just allow those little nuances of just daily conversations or daily ahas, just like, oh, that's good enough for me. And I want to make sure that we bring that to light in organizations. Like, hey, this little kind of revelation for one can be even a greater revelation for all. That's why leadership conferences, that's why podcasts, that's why, the book that you're writing is so important to the development of culture, because if we can somehow shed some light, or someone can have that little aha moment, then we'll all be better for it. At least I am better for it. And I've tried to shared that concept. I had forgotten about it. I didn't even thought about it until it happened to me again. I came here and someone was parked in my spot.
Oh, now you got a spot. Robby's got a spot.
Yeah, now I have a spot.
Okay.
But I came in and someone was parked in my spot, and it reminded me of what, I don't mind. That's fine. I don't care. No big deal. I park somewhere else. But even in the culture, like we have to express that. And I expressed it to the coaches. I expressed what happened at Ohio State to the coaches. I expressed it that if you're a leader, then lead. If you're a leader, then help develop people, put that in them, because you and I both know that most people are just going through life and just waiting to see what happens to them instead of making things happen.
Our friend Jake Thompson, he shared this with me a year or so ago about culture. And, he shared that in reality, there's not a weak or a strong culture, as he puts together. It's either positive or negative. And what's interesting by that concept is we're talking about as a team to achieve something at the pinnacle of the recognition heap as far as a national championship, or say it's an organization and they win awards, they accomplish something great in their industry or their field. And in order to do that, there needs to be a culture of positivity, that it's possible. And I think one of the pieces that I hold on to is it's not this strong or negative or strong or weak, because every culture is equally strong as far as whatever it is, it will become. And the ability to use the lesson that you just shared with us. Hey, I had this revelation. I was parking here. No one else knew it. Oh, this could turn sour. Instead, I'm going to, maybe a later point, or I'm going to tell the story so it has value. To me, that really creates a positive culture because we're open speaking about it. How does that hit you?
Well, think about this. The first command that God gave man, the first command, he says, I've given you all the earth. I've given you all the land. He says, I want you to be fruitful. I said, I want you to prosper. He says, I want you to multiply. He says, and I want you to be responsible. And that's where we fail, is all of us don't feel like we're responsible. Like I'm responsible for some things. That is the very beginning of what we say around programs, and you'll tell somebody, like, do your job, right? Do your job. And so if I'm responsible, God's saying, hey, I've given you this, now you be responsible for it. Okay. So if you look at, I'm supposed to steward what? I'm supposed to steward everything that God has given me. If he's given me health, right? Then I'm responsible for that. Okay. Then I don't put anything in my body excessively that's going to any way harm it. I try to also take care of it and take care of my heart. Well, if he's given me a healthy mind, then I don't want anything going in there that's going to in any way destroy it. We are responsible for culture. And most people don't feel that. And what we have to do is we have to make sure that the people in our organization have the keys, which a key represents ownership, right? Represents ownership. I hate mowing my grass. I hate it. I do not like mowing my yard. I'm allergic to most things. In fact, I spent a couple days in California, and one of my friends told me, I think that's poison ivy over there or poison oak. I didn't go near it, right? But somehow on my golf glove, I got a little bit of the poison oak oil. And now I am literally in this podcast covered in poison oak. Covered in poison oak. As I learned. So I have this disdain to mowing my yard, but I have this incredible gratification when I do and it's all done. And I look back, I'm like, I did that. Why? Because that's my house, that's my yard, and ownership. So ownership is a responsibility, but I'm telling you what, when you finish the task to make your yard look better than everybody else's, it makes you feel good. To me, that's culture.
One of the things that I think gets people in trouble, that responsibility, is the unsure, do I need to be responsible for that? And there's an element that I believe this happens in so many organizations, that a leader expects others to just take ownership rather than inviting people to take ownership. And, it's your house. You signed on the dotted line. You signed on the line. Okay, that is mine. I'm paying the bill, right? But if all of a sudden your son, if you want to say, hey, Silas, let's take ownership and you mow so you grow. And he's like, dude, Dad, that's not my job. You always do it. But, I think there's a story of Dale Carnegie, I believe, did this, or someone did this, and they encouraged their son. Maybe it was one of the Coveys. It was one of the Coveys, and they talked about it in one of their books, where encouraged them, hey, I want you to make it look beautiful. Take ownership in it. And so as I think about that story, as you're sharing, have you seen, or what do you guys do as an organization? What have you done in other organizations you've led, churches, other, consulting businesses, to really implore upon people the opportunity to take ownership so they feel indebted for responsibility?
Yeah, absolutely. One, they have for ownership, right, is you have to understand that for where I'm at to be even greater value is I have to put in the energy and effort. Like, it has a certain value now, but if I want it to grow, if I want the organization to grow, if I want the bottom line to grow, then I have to see that initially and understand that my effort actually increases that value. And so as a leader, you have to show them, like, hey, I always say people come to church for Christ, but they come back for community. Like, they know where to find Christ. It's in a church. They know where to find it.
Let me twist that and say it a different way. People go to a job for pay. They come back because of the people they work with.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Because if the culture's bad and the people they work with are negative in their culture and it's not been developed and grown, then they won't work there. So maybe the retention problem across the nation is because of negative culture. I don't want to be there. I don't like the people I work with. So why would I come back to it? Or why would I give more effort or energy into something that I don't like? And maybe that's why. Maybe the production's low because of that.
One thing that I think of, and my hope is that you're going to be able to, give us a tease now, but share really with the audience is, we mentioned earlier, as far as your involvement at Michigan, right? And that's a big part of what you do today. That's obviously why you're sitting where you're at. But, and I mentioned this climb upwards to the top of the mountain. And you mentioned earlier the definition, the declaration, and then the defense of that. The reality is last year was not a back-to-back championship. Last year wasn't of the record success as someone listening that maybe they had a phenomenal sales year in 23 and 24 was just not so much. They had a church that grew tremendously in 23 and 24 it was kind of stagnant, or maybe they had some staff changes and they had to reiterate that. What can you share as far as something that maybe you guys are working at, or to give them encouragement of how to either propel forward or to embrace that in their culture to move ahead?
We talk about this, and again, because we have the rivalry here, and I'm not saying this because of that. I'm saying this because it makes sense. And we have in our building a countdown to when we play Ohio State. I just walked past it. It's just 200, and I'm just 280 something days is when we play Ohio State again. So there's a countdown to that game again. When that's gonna happen. So that's in front of us. I wonder how many churches have a countdown in front of everybody when Easter is. You and I even talked about it. Like we were unsure what day is Easter falling on in 2025. But I think a lot of times we don't keep the things that are important in front of us long enough, right? They sneak up on us, or maybe we don't allow the other people who are new to the organization or new to our church see the value of what's ahead of us and how great this is. And I'm going to quote. I don't have the right coach, so I'm not going to say his name. But there's a longstanding college basketball coach. He's known for doing this, and it's incredible. And he talks about how he builds a championship culture. And one practice a year, what they do is they film the practice. Everyone comes in ready to practice, and they practice cutting down the net with a pair of gold scissors. Because they're getting ready to do that one day, or hopefully do that. And so they actually practice how they'll act during a championship win. And culturally, that's important. Culture that drives it, culture that pushes us. So, man, I know you didn't have a great season last year, but are you practicing this year for that championship you've yet to achieve? I think that's all of us. So even for us, we have on the back of our practice jerseys, we're going to have four different shirts that our guys are going to wear through each season. So we have the winter cycle, we have the spring practices, we have the summer cycle and fall camp. And so they'll wear this shirt, but on the back of the shirt, it's the national championship logo. It's everywhere. Why? Because ultimately that's the goal. Yeah, do we want to win the big game? Yeah, but then we'll quickly go to the Big Ten championship and college football playoff and all those things. So that's a simple idea for any organization: is what's in front of the people right now, what's on their windshield, that's big enough for them to see.
Well, sports gives such an easy target. A lot of organizations, I think, executives, leaders struggle because what does success mean this year? Well, success means we made a lot of money, or whatever that may be for that organization. And I think that really hampers people because they don't have that scoreboard per se, the countdown clock or the days until, which is an element of a scoreboard. They don't have that in front of them to say, are we on pace? Are we not? And or the other big factor there is
we all do it. Like, think about it. Personally, we do it. Like, that's why you get more accomplished a few days before you go on vacation than you do, the entire week or month. And we plan and prepare to go on vacation. I'm going to get fit. I'm going to get ready for summer. I'm going to do all these things. We do it in seasons. And ultimately, we just hope things happen in our churches. We hope things happen in our organizations. And so we have to have clear and defined goals. And it doesn't have to be a ton of them. How about a few? How about line item a few things? I put down in 2022, I wrote down on a legal pad, and I found it the other day when we moved, like 120. It wasn't 100 things. It wasn't even 50 things. It was like 120. It was everything I could think of. 123 things. And I hadn't done anything in my life at that point. I hadn't done anything. And a lot of those things, I would say probably 75% of those things that I wrote down when I was 22 have happened over those, 44 years or 24 years that I've been living since then. And, I didn't go back and look at it again. I got it out of my heart, got it out of my head, put it down. So there's some things, like a long list, right, that I may never have to look at for 20 years. But what is the small list that I have to look at every day and every week, every month, that actually said, man, we can accomplish this, go after this? And I think what a lot of people do is I don't know, I'll talk to my wife sometimes. My dad has a bad habit of this. He'll just start talking to me, and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about because I have no context for what's going on in your head. And so you're trying to tell me something. My wife would do it too. I'm like, I don't know. Start from the beginning. I think a lot of leaders have a lot of things up here that they never bring here. And our organizations are wondering, what's he doing? What's he saying? And I'll say this, like, I went and kind of I did a little work with an organization, and they asked me after I did a work for a few days, went and asked me, they said, okay, I have asked you one question or two questions. One is, what's the best part about our culture? I said, you have a culture of honor. Love it. Great culture of honor. I said, everyone respects the individuality of people. I said, that's great. Great culture. As long as you don't, if you don't lose that culture of honor, you actually do some great things. You can build on that. It's a great platform to build on. All right. What's the bad part of our culture? I said, you change too much. I said, you've changed. These people, man, they have whiplash. They have motion sickness. They're just going through like, wow, what's going to happen next? And so they're handicapped. They don't want to do more because they're afraid, man, they're just going to change it anyways. Why should I go so far down this road when I'm going to have to backpedal and go down a different road? And so as leaders too, let's not change for change, and let's make sure that we're building on the right platform.
As someone that's listening in that, is thinking about coming to the event, and I know you've shared this because when we met each other, not quite a year ago, the power of being in person and kind of outside of your norm every day to be around others. What, from that perspective, or as what is someone going to gain coming to the event rather than watching the video replay or reading one of the books or doing something? What are they going to get from being in the room that to be true?
Let me just start here. Let me just speak to the people that, maybe you're a little bit like some other leaders where you're a little introverted, you're a little kind of like keep to yourself. You'd much rather read a book. You'd much rather watch a podcast in the privacy of your home. And I get that. And I'm kind of that same way. But let me tell you this, I've learned something a long time ago, like going to events that maybe you're going to feel uncomfortable at the beginning. It won't last. You will feel uncomfortable at the beginning. But as long as you lock in with people, become vulnerable, understanding that we're all human, we're all just basically trying to figure out along the way anyways, that to me, it's like a cold tub, right?
There you go.
That's how Like, I don't want to get in the cold tub. While I'm in the cold tub, I want to get out of the cold tub. But once I got out of the cold tub, I'm like, I'm really glad I did that because you feel good about it. You feel good about it. So I'll say this, whether it's reading a book, watching online, you got to get this. You can find love online, but you can't make love online.
Okay. There you go. I mean, it is what it is.
I can meet my wife online, right? But it's never going to bring growth to our family. Our families never grow. There's never going to be something new born into our life because that has to happen in person. And if you're wanting something new to be born into your life, you got to come to this. You got to be a part of something in person to do that, because one is you might get content, but you won't get community.
And I think that last piece is something that I've experienced, our ability to create a friendship and those communities that are so powerful to me because it helps give me other people that either I learn from or what I find in those unique and those relationships that I've continued to build, people that are going to cheer you on and champion you through whatever you're going through. And this is my belief, we can't have enough of those.
Absolutely. Here, I found something years ago when I was a youth pastor, and I still use it today because I feel like it's very valid, is that people are looking, if you can discover these two things in a person, be really helpful for them. One is you discover their hurt. Is what can I pray with you about? And you discover their heart, right? Is what can I celebrate in your life? That's why all these social media icons, they use a heart as a time of celebration. Hey, I like it. It's a heart. It's so what can I pray with you about? And what can I celebrate going on in your world? What's their hurt and heart? And I promise you do that. If you just take those two things into a conference, into a meeting like this, even for you, hey, this is where I'm hurting. This is where I'm vulnerable. This is where I've failed this year. This is where I've failed in my family. This is where I've failed in my business. This is where I failed just getting here today. Man, this is what I've done right. And I think we all want someone to pray with us, and we all want someone to celebrate with us.
Robby, as we wrap up, where can people, learn more about you that are going to be at the event? Where can they learn what is important to Robby? So that way, one, they feel connected being at the event, but also they just learn more about you and what you're about.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'm on all the social media platforms, just at Robby Emery, and then you can go to robbyemery.com, do that. And then also just, this is news, probably by May, hopefully by May at the conference, I'll have something to put in your hand, whether it's a pamphlet or a book. We're working on it right now. So hopefully it'll be there to be able to be in your hand. So something exciting to share with everybody. So you'll find that there. But hope you come to the conference and we can meet in person, because I'm that type of guy. I'm a one-on-one personal guy, not just, hey, follow me type guy.
Awesome. Well, thank you for everyone watching, listening today. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button as well as the bell so you get notified whenever we drop new episodes, new content. As well, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, wherever you listen to that stuff, if you could rate and review this episode, it will help more people find and listen to impactful leaders like Robby. One last thing. As Robby shared about the Impact Driven Leader Summit, I would love for you to be there. It's May 7th and 8th in Spokane, Washington. You can go to idlsummit.com to grab your seat, to reserve your spot, to be there. And as Robby said, yes, it'll be a small, intimate event where you'll be able to connect with the speakers. And if you want even more personal time, join the VIP session where we're going to roundtable, where we're going to sit around and we're really going to dig deep as a VIP group, but also with each of the speakers. Until next time, choose to lead with impact.